Thank you. Thanks, Isabel. Thanks, Dan. Thanks, Kevin.
Yeah, thanks to everyone, Dan, Isabel, Kevin, for sharing your expertise. And I believe, Stephen, that brings us to the next module.
That's right. So I'm just my fingers on the button to make Fred a presenter here. So there you go, Fred. You should be presenter now, and I'll let you do the introductions, JJ.
Okay, thank you. All right, so we called this module "What's Next," and we had a reason for that. As facility and energy managers, we always have questions. You know, what's next for the future of energy prices, and for that matter, carbon costs? What's next for the future of energy sources? Are they secure? Where's our energy coming from? What's next for incentive programs? What's next for project funding? What's next for resiliency requirements and aspects of a circular economy? We see now that governments are moving to, move us towards net zero and carbon neutral in our buildings, or net zero ready, they're calling it. So what sort of project helps us get started in the right direction? We've talked about so far in the course different aspects of energy and energy conservation measures, and today we have some subject matter experts from Ecosystem to tell us about what they're doing in a project that is a culmination of a lot of the things that we've been discussing. So by way of introduction, from Ecosystem, we have Asaf Benon. He has more than 20 years of international business experience. He heads Ecosystem's client development team. His pragmatic and integrated approach is geared to deliver value by uncovering desired outcomes and formulating the appropriate contractual framework to deliver on them. He's being a proponent of contractual framework that supports alignment of stakeholder interests, innovation, and guaranteed results. And I like this. In his tender and formative years, Asaf earned his Master of Science in Genetics before transitioning to business admin. A common thread throughout Asaf's career has been a focus on business-to-business markets where deep, long-term client relationships are essential to overcome barriers and uncover opportunities. We also have from Ecosystem Frederick Leonard, and beginning with Ecosystem in 2010, Fred Leonard has stood out for his remarkable level of commitment and technical expertise. After contributing to the design of a $21 million project at the Laval University Hospital Centre, Fred led operations in the Ontario office as a project director for energy performance projects in the municipal sector. He's now Ecosystem's knowledge sharing manager. He identifies key expertise leading to project success and integrates this information throughout the company. He promotes best practices and leverages opportunities for continuous improvement. So I'll turn it over to Asaf and Fred, and they have a great presentation. I'm sure everybody will be interested to hear what they have to say.
Thanks, JJ.
Thank you so much, AJ. Can you hear us, by the way? I'm just making a voice check.
Yeah, it's perfect.
All right, we can go. So thank you very much for this lovely introduction. It's really good. I think where we want to start is maybe start with the agenda for today. There we go. So when we were thinking how we want to talk about what we want to present today, we said, let's bring some home truths into the presentation, things that will resonate with everybody. And essentially the agenda for today is alignment of interest. So what do we mean by that? So essentially here's a home truth. We as people, we do what we're incentivized to do. If you incentivize me to do one thing, but when I'm supposed to, it's the one thing I will really focus on. So, for example, if I have a cost plus model for delivering services. Essentially, I'm making a percentage of every service I'm providing you. My interest is to provide you with more and more services or more and more products because I'm going to make a percentage of everything. If I'm giving you double the services, I'm going to make double the profit. It's just, economics kind of one-on-one. So when we're talking about projects like deep energy retrofits, we wanted to introduce folks and kind of to make the case for what we call an outcome-based approach to deep energy retrofits that aligns the interest between all the parties to make sure that everybody's focused on the right thing, that we bring innovation, collaboration, and all those good words, and actually explain how it actually happens by focusing on your right model that is focused really on outcome. I'll explain more, but let's continue with it.
Yeah, no, thanks, Asaf. That's a great introduction. How do you achieve that alignment of interests? Well, I mean, the best way we've found is to do it through the procurement and delivery approach. So throughout some of the slides today, the presentation, we're going to talk about a few examples, mainly one case which was mentioned by JJ earlier about the Schul, but the whole organization and how they did that. But first, before we dig deeper in that, I think it would be great, Asaf, if we can maybe define a bit more what outcomes are and what they look like, especially tailored to this healthcare presentation.
Perfect. So here's if let's have another home truth here. In a hospital environment, the objective of a hospital healthcare facility is to improve patient welfare, to improve patient outcomes, to save lives. This is what they really need. This is their top mission. In addition, they have potential other outcomes that they want to focus on, such as asset renewal, sustainability, the environmental condition of the facility, of course, cost saving is always important, resiliency, operation, the sky's the limit, and we can think of so many more outcomes that a hospital needs to deliver on top of patient welfare. But at the end of the day, patient welfare is what's going to drive everything. Now, if you here, Canadian Coalition for Green Healthcare, we want to focus on reduction of carbon. How can we bring something such as carbon into a higher priority, to bring it to create the political capital within an organization to actually move a project forward, but make it successful in the right type of procurement, so both to be able to get the results we're looking here in healthcare, but also to deliver them in the best way. So what we are trying to make the case here is that we want to kick the case for outcome-based approach to procurement can help us in getting into that objective. So we'll start with a kind of a little quote here. Houston, we have a problem. You're all familiar with NASA, I'm sure. I can't imagine anybody not familiar with NASA. And for years, everybody knew that NASA is building rockets and shuttles to take us to anywhere from the moon, around the planet, and what have you. So NASA was in the business of building those massive rockets. But there was time now recently that they realized that they don't have as much money as they used to. And what are they going to do? So they decided to go on an innovative procurement approach that is outcome-based approach. And they went commercially. What does it mean? They said, hey, somebody can bid on the actual outcome, which is getting to the space station, putting cargo to the space station, or having crewed mission to the space station. Remember, NASA, for a long period since the end of the space shuttle program, didn't put people, didn't have the capacity to deliver cargo or crew up to space. They had to use the Russian space agency. So they had to come with a different approach, and what they decided is to go to the market. And they brought, for example, a couple of bidders. One of them, sure, again, you know Boeing as well as SpaceX, and that's one of the stories that Elon Musk has been saying, is that what they created, essentially, they asked them, give us what we need to put cargo at the space station or crew. We will not deal with the machines and with the rockets. Our mission of NASA is to do that, not to build these things. And what they created is a competition and a party that had a sole objective to get the cargo to the moon, not the actual requirements too much, or not to, of course, safety is important, getting them safety, but they didn't focus on the nuts and the bolts and the specs so much, which is what they used to procure. Because what they used to procure is the machines to build it on their own. And now they said, no, just get us to the space station, the outcome. And if we're taking it here to the healthcare environment, you can think about it. You guys are on facility management. So you have a living and breathing pulse of a building, of a facility, of a hospital. It's very much like a patient, and that you need to make sure that there's enough air and that the environmental control are good. You're dealing essentially with almost day-to-day surgery. If you are a surgeon and you're going into an operation, your outcome is a successful operation where the patient lives. You can't say at the end, oh, the operation went amazing, but the patient is dead. That's, in all seriousness, it's not something that they are trained to do. They're trained to deal with the outcome, a live patient. So the end game, that what we're trying to put here as a case, is not the specs, but the outcome.
Before I continue, sorry to all if there was a bit of a glitch. I have 3 screens. I've been working from home for 5 years, and it looks like GoToMeeting was switching between 2 of my screens. So hopefully I've got it figured out now. Now, maybe for a story, I'm sure you guys can all appreciate the example of NASA, but something that may be a bit closer to your reality. We're going to talk about a case study on the Quebec University Hospital Center, otherwise called the CHU de Quebec. So the CHU de Quebec is a organization which manages 5 sites, 5 healthcare sites. They have about 15,000 employees total, 3,000 out of which are technical services people. And across the 5 sites, they had an annual energy bill that totaled roughly $14 million. So we're going to see how they used an outcome-based model to deliver, results across multiple outcomes at the 4 sites that are shown on the screen right now. Talking about outcomes, I mean, obviously patient safety and welfare was their main mission, so that's definitely an outcome. Quite a bit of what kicked the project was the provincial government's desire to reduce the energy use index, mandating a target for every organization. The CHUs had their own sustainability target that they wanted to achieve as well. Obviously they wanted cost savings to reduce their annual energy bill, which was significant. But they also wanted to leverage those savings to support their strategic plan and their healthcare mission. All of this sounds good, and I'm sure all of you agree, but quite a few of you will also think, well, I still got to maintain my building. I still have, equipments to replace, and that's where the asset renewal outcome becomes important. And we are here today to tell you that those are not 2 different things. In fact, to get the most value, you should combine asset renewal with your other outcomes, because through this method, you will maximize them. More specifically on this project, I'm sure you guys are all familiar with this kind of drawings. This is a engineering construction drawing from the 1950 showing a steam heating network in one of the buildings at the CHU. So this steam network was still going strong when we started the project, well into the 2010, 2009 years. It had been modified many, many times, but that was still what was heating the building. Now, it may look like this today, not quite what it used to be back in the 50s. And control was a bit erratic. Some rooms you would walk by in the middle of winter and windows would be open because it's overheating. But really they had a bigger problem. The problem was that the condensate lines that had originally been installed, within the walls of all of the buildings were starting to leak at a pretty regularly rate, which is not great. I mean, leaks equal flood, and I'm sure all of you can picture what a flood in the middle of the winter in a patient's room, in a doctor's office, or even in a lab can feel like. That feels like a call that your team has to answer. And the Schul team was great answering those calls, working with the healthcare people, moving the patients. But this is just a tangible example of an outcome that they wanted. They wanted to get rid of this issue that they had, but they did not mandate a solution or a spec. They just stated that they wanted to get rid of this issue. So it just ended up that our team proposed a steam to hot water conversion because this allowed us to maximize other outcomes. Because by switching to a hot water network, you can have more efficient boilers, you increase combustion efficiency, so that's less greenhouse gas emission. And I think you kind of see the picture. And I picked on this one example to give you, something tangible, but just note that across all of the 4 sites, there were radiators to change as well, but there were many boilers that were due for replacement, many chillers, cooling towers, ventilation system. And they really put those in the specs not in the specs, sorry, but in the scope of the job that needed to be done. And they went about their route on an integrated outcome-based approach. But I think it would be good, I don't know, Asaf, if you want to talk a bit about how this approach is different than a traditional procurement.
For sure, that's great. We can go to the next slide. So in its basic, to make it in the most clear way, one approach is focused on the outputs and the value. The other one is more on the inputs and the price. So essentially, in the outcome-based approach, you have the owner, the facilities folks, the operation folks, and other people in the hospital. They need to come up with the strongest number of problems that need to be solved, with the largest number of outcomes that need to be addressed, to put them all together and define what they are, prioritize them, say what is important to us at the end of this process. And after that, the owner goes and selects a partner that will deliver it. One party or a very defined party that will be responsible that all those outcomes that have been defined will be solved. Whereas in the more traditional way, what we do is say, okay, we're going to go and we need to change 1, 2, 3. So we want somebody to deal with the boiler, and maybe somebody to do a replacement here, and essentially there is no defined outcome. What you're putting is the inputs, and everything has an attached price to it, as opposed to the other method. Now we're all familiar, people in the facilities, that once you open the walls, you don't know what you're going to find. If there's a quote by a 18th century Prussian field marshal by the name of Helmut von Moltke. He's a famous strategist, and he says, no plan survives a contact with the enemy. Meaning, once it all starts, and once you open the wall and all the plans and all the charts that you had from the 50s and what you actually find in there, they might not be the same. So if I'm incentivized to change machines, I'm saying, well, this is not what I was procured to do, to deal with all those unexpectancies. But if you're said, if I was contracted to deliver the output, it's on me to find a solution to what I find behind the wall, as well as the opportunities. Maybe we can talk about that a little bit more.
Yep. Yeah. I mean, really focusing on outcomes provide flexibility. I'm sure all of you can think of a recent project where halfway in you wished you knew some things earlier in the design that would have impacted how you went about to start things. I mean, and these particular cases at these 4 sites, there's I can't think of how many times, you know, we ended up changing the design. And I think there's something, you know, it's a bit overbeaten, but change is the only constant in this dynamic world that we have today. You know, a tangible example here for us, it came from multiple angles. The incentive programs changed, you know, some closed, some didn't have any more money, some new came about. There's areas within some of the sites that were being repurposed, or entirely new buildings that were being added to these sites while we were doing the design. So I think the model really was beneficial to make sure that we keep our eyes and our focus on the end game. But so how did the SHU went about and procure this project? Well, there's a lot of things on this slide, but it's really simple. I mean, you basically need 3 things. First, you need to state the what and not the how. You know, you don't want specs, you don't want equipment, you want to state the outcome, the end game, what you're looking for. Then there's the evaluation, which, you know, by experience we've found is good as a mix between quantitative and qualitative, and I can go and explain that a bit. But you also need to make sure that you figure out your parameters, whether those are financial guarantees, the asset renewal, how much money you expect to spend. To give you an example, the SHU went about and did this in 2 steps. So the first step, they went with a qualification, you know, period where they narrowed down the providers to 3 serious candidates. And in their own word, they did this just because they didn't want to waste their time evaluating many proposals, because those are, you know, significant documents. And they also wanted to sort of shave, you know, companies and firms that did not have the experience to pull off such a big project. Then in the second stage, they asked those 3 bidders to come up with a proposal that was descriptive, but also that included numbers, to commit on what was their approach. And really they used a quantitative approach to, you know, assign a value to different parameters, again, using the financials. One of them was the net present value. They had stated that they wanted us to provide a 20-year net present value of the project we were proposing, using, you know, such discount rates and the savings, the recurring savings. But they all were also comparing project absolute cost, absolute savings, how much incentive they would get. But the main parameter was really net present value, because to them, the upfront cost, which was something that was mentioned earlier during the Energy Star presentation, wasn't so much that important. What was important is that at the end, they were getting the best value. So in terms of the delivery, Asaf, I don't know if you want to, again, go back to the 2 models to compare them.
I'll just mention that when you have one accountable partnership, you know who to go to get things done. And what I mean by that is that if they have the designers, the construction folks, the commissioning, safety, all those folks working under one accountable partnership, you know who to go to get things done, as opposed to multiple parties that you have to manage on your own to get to that objective. And this is one of the fundamental differences. And if we're going back to the top of the presentation, the alignment of interest, if you have multiple parties, each one to do their own job, their interest is not potentially aligned with your overall goal. Whereas if you have one accountable partnership that they have to deliver your overall goal, the interests are aligned. And just to, you know, you all seen, I'm sure, in your past careers, that the motivational poster with all the folks rowing together in the same direction and talking about teamwork. But if we're putting it, you know, taking the cynical aspect aside and looking at seriously, we have, if you have a team of construction folks who are working also on the design, and designers who are continuously there in the construction, when we open the walls and we found either the negative surprise or maybe an opportunity, they're able to react. They're able to work together to get to that finish line and the desired outcome. Whereas if you have folks who are, just in charge of the design, and then they have to give the baton over to the people in construction, and anything that happens that was not, that is a surprise, it can lead to finger pointing because they're not contractually motivated to achieve the outcome, only to achieve their very specific narrow goals.
Yeah, and I want to add to that, Asaf, that it goes back to the human nature. Establishing relationship is really strong. In all of these interventions that we did, there's tremendous value that happened when we contributed with all of the staff at each facility. There was lots of knowledge transfer going both ways, really, because we come in and we cannot instinctively know, even though we all have an expertise in building operation, how your particular site operates. That's where the facility staff comes in and shares building and operational information, which helps feed the design early, but not only early, all along the way during the implementation. And another also thing where it adds a lot of value was, which again with both ways, was during the M&V part of this project. Because during the operation stage, there's a handover, the facility operates the building, but sometimes there, again, change comes up or there's a situation and they are wondering, why did the BMS set the set point that way or acted this way and change, and they would contact our team, which was the same that designed it originally, so that we could reshare or explain in detail, and sometimes we would make adjustments, sometimes they would just understand and leave it as is, but this really brings a lot of value. In the client's word, the firm almost became an extension of the facility department.
And which is, by the way, this a very good aspect when you're dealing with a very complicated project. Now, now there's an advantage also to the previous model, to the traditional model, where if it's something that is very discrete, very small, that this is one certain one-to-one equipment machine that you can get a technician to do it for you very efficiently. You don't need to go to an outcome-based approach. You don't want to, it fits when you are trying to really achieve deep, strong outcomes on multiple levels and also help create that political capital within an organization to push the project forward. At the end of the day, also from risk management perspective, if you have the alignment of interest where the project team needs to deliver the outcomes or else they're not going to get paid, they will make sure they're carrying the load with you all the way to the end. However, if every person has a discrete goal to achieve that is not on the outcome or not necessarily connected to the outcome, at the end of the day, the owner carries all the burden to making this thing happen and making sure that everybody's doing their role, because if, again, we do what we're incentivized to do, and they might not get the same people who are focused on their overall outcome, but just on deliver the very particular services that they were required.
So back to the project itself, here are just a few pictures of some of the intervention that were done. You can see the global investment across the 4 sites, and there's many more measures that were done. Obviously, lighting retrofit was done everywhere, recommissioning, you name it. But there were also customized solutions that were implemented to address the specific need of each facility, considering the utility rates and the incentive that were available for those sites. If I quickly go, clockwise at the top left, this is a picture of when we were digging a geothermal field where 60 boreholes were dug, each of 600 feet deep. And I could do an entire presentation on the technical aspect of this and how this geothermal field was linked to both the cooling and heating network using a compounded heat pumps and also, combined with heat recovery and the year-long cooling load, how they maximize the efficiency of their heating network. But I'm just going to stop there because that would be, I'm just going to get lost in my technical aspect. At the top right, we had a solar wall that was installed to preheat some of the fresh air because, one of the sites had this perfectly aligned, so the southeast, southwest facing building where two ventilation systems that were 100% fresh air were installed. By the way, we used red screen, not this version, the past version, to calculate the savings there. At the lower right, this was a picture of a craning of a new chiller because one of the building was, not quite up to date on the cooling capacity that it was supposed to have. So we added 720 tons of cooling capacity to that building. But we did it with, again, a bit of an interesting technical thing, with adiabatic, a chiller, which was very efficient. And at the lower left, it's just a picture. I mean, it may seem a bit messy, but it was an upgraded boiler plants where it used to be two huge steam boiler and an electric boiler as well. And those were all stripped and replaced by 6 hot water boiler that provided better redundancy across the whole system. So what did these achieve in the end? Well, here's just a high-level overview of dollar savings and environmental outcomes from interventions at these 4 sites. Guaranteed annual savings were about $3.7 million, which corresponds to 29% of the utility costs at those 4 sites, not the 5. Energy consumption was down roughly the same at 30%. And GHG emission, which is already low to start with and come back to the hydroelectricity, was down 56% at all of the sites. And it's not mentioned on this slide, but they were really able to leverage incentive because all of this was done with a 7-year payback, including all of the fees, from design, construction, M&V, everything. So it's a deep retrofit that's not going to pay for itself, in 20, 25 years. Of course, some of the interventions and the measures were longer payback, but once they were combined together, the end result is pretty impressive. Now for some of the takeaways, solving various operational issues, really the outcome-based approach is a method that's perfectly suited to solve multiple outcomes. But you first have to define the what you want. Optimize budget and equipment replacement. I just alluded to this fact. The SHU institution at the onset of the project tied $7.5 million of asset renewal capital that they knew they had to put anyway, and they tie it to this project to make sure that their money went farther, because it would not only be invested in new equipment, but it would also contribute to the greater good of other outcomes. I mentioned it earlier, and I want to mention it again. Just be clear on your parameters and also be transparent about them, because that's something we see on RFQ from time to time. People set parameters, but they don't really set a value to them. So it just ends up in a situation that, us engineer will try to optimize a problem. You're telling me all the variables, but you're not telling me the factor or to which each variable is important to you. So I may optimize the problem, but it may not be the value that you're looking for, because it all comes down to value. Really, it was mentioned earlier in the Energy Star presentation, it's optimal cost of ownership. And there's value to be had with the model at the onset by identifying and clearly stating what your outcomes are. But there's also value that can be uncovered during the process, which we refer sometimes to hidden value, just going through that. I'm seeing a question. I'm just going to get there because I got one next slide and then I'm done. So in a summary, why it works, we've spoken about it, alignment of interests. It really promotes innovation because we are not bound by rules or a certain equipment or just mental rules, a mindset. You let people that are paid to do this come up with the best solution to your problem. And it maximizes project value across multiple objectives. Your budget goes farther when it's spent on solution that bring value to all of your different outcomes at once. So curious to hear about your story or to answer any question that you have. I have one from Faris Rashid asking, what's the difference between outcome-based approach procurements and going for ESCO approach? So Asaf, I don't know if you want to tackle that one.
Yeah, for sure. So in an ESCO approach, there's a very strong focus on energy. So we call the energy services companies. And here, the focus is not on it's not a package of machines, financing, or what have you to reach just energy savings. The intent is to address multiple outcomes, and the focus is not on the financing. The organizations usually can pay for it if you deliver enough value, and there's no spec on what equipment needs to deliver. And again, it's not just energy, there's value in GHG, asset renewal, deferred maintenance, safety, and again, the more the organization is digging into those outcomes, it's actually bringing a design and engineering strength together to solve it rather than focus on the machines and the energy savings.
Yeah, and I would add to that the approach is much more than a guaranteed ROI, which often ends up being the case in ESCO projects, where everything is tied to like one number.
Well, thank you, Asaf and Fred, for a very unique perspective on energy and infrastructure renewal project delivery. If anybody has any questions, please feel free to ask. You can come on the mic as well and talk directly with Asaf, Fred, and the group. I have one question. The folks at the various sites, they continue to do their own maintenance. Maintenance wasn't part of the project delivery.
No, exactly. Maintenance was not part of the project delivery. We have, I quickly alluded to it, states in the process where we hand over, after the initial commissioning, and but I'm just trying to phrase what I have in my mind, sorry, but there's no maintenance included, although we do stay involved. It's part of the guarantee, but we will not do any project, and then our competitors, I'm sure, do the same, without being